Hello, I love that intro. I really do. So pleased with myself with that one. It just sums up resilience and all the knocks and bumps we get along the way. Hey, welcome everyone to the Resilience Reef. It's Friday night in my world. It is Friday morning in Shabnam's world. And then Shabnam is my guest today. And we are talking about chronic illness, chronic health, chronic illness. Hi, Shabnam. How are you?
Hello, Karen. I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, good. All the better for seeing you today. You do brighten my day up. I have to say, I was just saying earlier before we came on, you are so calm. Every time I meet you, you are so calm. You just
What a compliment. What a lovely compliment. Thank you.
You got an air of confidence about you. Let me just introduce Shabnam then. Now, she's had a wonderfully colourful life as Shabnam. She has lived in 4 countries. She has got 3 beautiful children. And she has done 2 degrees in psychology, a degree and postgraduate degree. So she's achieved some awesome things. If that's not resilience, I don't know what resilience is. Just living in a different country to where you were born is resilience, especially if you are learning new languages, etc. But you've been through some awesome stuff. But at the same time, there is something else that you've been dealing with, which is a chronic illness throughout that time for good over 10 years now, right? Over a decade, dealing with chronic pain and chronic fatigue. So the story today is Shabnam, and we'll be talking about what that chronic illness was, how it started, how did she notice she'd even got a chronic illness, and what happened along the way, because she hasn't half battled. I've heard the full story, and you're going to hear it today because she has battled hard through all them great times, them great achievements. She struggled, and times we all have, struggles when we've got a chronic illness, but to have all those things to deal with at the same time is quite awesome. So let's kick this show off today, Shabnam. Tell people where you are and how are you?
Thank you so much, Karen. It's great to be joining you here. So I'm Shabnam Rakhiba. I'm originally from Mauritius. I spent around 13 years in Bermuda, and currently I'm around 1 hour, a little bit less than 1 hour away from London. So I'm here with my family. I've got 3 kids, the youngest being 5 years old. And as you mentioned, I have a degree and a master's in psychology. I completed life coaching training. I did acceptance and commitment therapy. And nowadays, I'm an empowerment coach for women with chronic illness and pain.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, in all this, she's even managed to become a coach and help other people with chronic illness. So there you go.
It's a wonderful journey, but definitely a very difficult journey. As you mentioned, the reason I'm working, I support women with chronic illness nowadays is because of my own lived experience, basically. Because when I was I have suffered from strange pains for around nearly 20 years now. So it started when I was a teenager, basically, with severe pain during my cycle. And afterwards, it progressed to migraines, chronic migraines, which would come for sometimes weeks, sometimes months, and would just disappear just like that one day. And it would come and go. It did that for a couple of years, and we could never understand what was going on, actually. Of course, I did all the scans, the MRI, the tests. You know how we go to the doctors and we try to figure out what in the world is wrong. But I could never understand. And then after the birth of my son, my second child, I started with just a little bit of back pain. And we thought it was just a little pinched nerve, maybe a sciatic nerve or something. Let's just go for some conservative treatments, try some physiotherapy, acupuncture, and so on. That should resolve it. And it didn't. And it dragged on until eventually it spread. And now, 13 years onward, I have chronic widespread pain in pretty much all over my body. I feel my joints, my muscles, I get nerve pains, migraines. So, yes, it's been quite a long journey. It's only within the last couple of years that I obtained a diagnosis of endometriosis and fibromyalgia. And interestingly enough, my symptoms do not fit the classic symptoms of neither endometriosis nor fibromyalgia. So I do not fit in either of these boxes very well. So this is where I am right now, Karen.
Yeah, and thanks. That's a really good summary of your life so far. Because I think the thing is that it must be incredibly frustrating because you've got all these symptoms and you're suffering terribly with pain, and yet no one can help you to understand what that is. You're getting various things, various labels thrown your way, but nothing concrete that says. And I think that's very common. We were talking earlier about how that's very common when you have a so-called invisible disease, that it's not obvious. It's not that you've got something physical like a leg missing, or
Mhm.
you've got a visible difference like a skin condition or something like that. When it's pain, it's internal, and you don't always want to show it, and that's very difficult to explain to people, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that the hardest part of the journey was trying to understand what's going on, because for the first 10 years, I saw so many doctors, did so many tests and scans, and also got so many diagnoses which were not quite
Mm.
right. And some of them were quite scary. And it's a very painful part of a journey, I must say, for someone who is well and then suddenly becomes unwell and doesn't understand why this is happening. And my journey is not unique. This is a story that I've been hearing from so many women, especially women with conditions like fibromyalgia, which cannot be
Mm.
seen. And with these types of conditions, they do not have a definitive test. Usually, you're ruling out other conditions to understand what's going on. So it's very distressing. And somewhere along the journey, I did think maybe I have something that's life threatening, and maybe we just don't know what it is yet, but by the time we understand, it's going to be too late. So you go through that very painful, distressing, and very fearful journey of trying to
Mm.
understand all of this. And like you mentioned so rightly, the chronic pain, the pain being not visible to others, this makes it even harder. Because when someone looks at me, they would never guess that I am in so much pain.
Yeah.
It cannot be seen. And the other important thing is when you are in chronic pain, you get so good at hiding the pain and your symptoms.
Yeah.
Usually, with acute pain, if you're well and suddenly you are unwell, you'll take to bed and everybody will know that you are unwell, you're in pain.
Mm.
But with chronic pain, you end up hiding your pain in such a way that others around you don't really, they really think that you are well and you're carrying on well. They would think that, you know, I'm completely well, I'm over it, and so
Mm.
on. But that's not true. It's still very much here. Um, and
Absolutely.
when I'm very unwell, they won't be seeing me because I'll be in bed. So people don't actually get to see me when I'm in that much pain. So it's a very hard
Yeah.
battle with hidden conditions, I would say.
Yeah. So one of the strategies you had there was to hide it well, basically to avoid people and places whenever you were in pain. But of course, we don't want to have to do that, do we? We don't have to necessarily hide what we have, but in the sense that's what you felt you needed to do. You needed to keep it within and not. And maybe, and I'm not sure, I'll ask you this: would you have achieved everything you did if you was very obvious or loud or visible with your pain? Because you managed to suck it up and suffer in silence, and yet you achieved such amazing things. So how would
Mm.
that Can you imagine how that would have been?
It's an interesting question. In general, in my life, I am quite open with what's going on with me, especially since I got a diagnosis. Before, it was more difficult because I could only tell people that I'm in pain, but I don't know why I'm in pain.
Okay.
And people seem to have a lot of difficulty accepting this, that you are in pain and the doctors are telling you that there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
So it becomes more of a case of you, being dramatic, or you're in a little bit of pain, but you're just oversensitive and things like that. But
Yeah.
I was lucky in that I had support from my family. My husband has always been quite understanding, very supportive, my children. And I was able to, disclose the pain and my symptoms whenever I needed. For instance, when I was studying at university, and there needed to be some accommodation and adjustments. For instance, I needed longer period of time for my assignment if I had a flare during the exam period, or even
Yeah.
during the exams. At one point, I was the only one using a laptop while everybody was writing away. And because I
Yeah.
couldn't, with my wrist pain, actually write for that long. So I did have to ask for accommodation and adjustments at the university. And even just recently, a year or two back, I was doing my life coaching training. And the very first thing that I said when, during in the beginning, when you're introducing yourself, I said,
Mm.
I have a hidden disability which impacts me. So you will be seeing me walking around a lot. You will see me carrying my hot water bottle. So don't mind me. That's how I am. And that made
Good.
it easier for me, basically,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be open and be comfortable. And I also obtained the support I got from my peers and my tutors. And that was
I think
important.
that's good. Yeah, I think that is important. But I understand that if you don't know what it is and you haven't got a label, I've been there too. It's very hard to share with people how you are feeling because they want something that they can relate to be able to say, "Oh, how is your XYZ today, and how are you feeling with that?" Whereas if you have something which is not a label yet, and there's a sense that people don't always believe you sometimes, especially with pain. It's a difficult one because I, like you, have heard a lot of stories where people haven't been believed when they said they're in pain. Maybe they're just using it and they don't want to get out of work, or they want to get out of chores or something. And until sometimes they have this definitive label that allows them to sit in a box somewhere, even if they're not completely comfortable in that box, they can then feel able to share it with other people. And that sharing is so important for our resilience, to help us to get others to help us too, to manage it and to feel okay with that.
Absolutely. Um, as I mentioned, now that I have a diagnosis, it's so much easier to share because people can relate to it. People
Yeah.
can understand, okay, I can just Google this and I understand what it is, let's say. But for me myself, a diagnosis has not made much of a difference in terms of management and so on.
Okay.
Definitely, I feel that having a diagnosis gave me the peace of mind. That's one. And secondly, made it easier to disclose to others.
Yeah.
And again, I must say that sometimes it does come to my head that maybe there's something else going on, you know?
Yeah, well, we can never be sure, can we? We can never be sure. A lot of emotional, as we know, as psychology people, we know that there's a lot of emotion that drives some of our illnesses. It can actually exacerbate it or trigger it. But at the same time, we've got to believe that there is hope and there is some way of managing it well. Because if we don't know what it is, we can't really get to grips with managing it too well.
Absolutely.
So how talk about the kind of things you talked about, the support and being able to share and asking for help actually with your university and getting them to accommodate your needs, which is really important. Is there anything else you can share with the people about what's got you through that time, what you've been able to do, either before you knew what it was and you were managing the symptoms, and now you kind of have an idea of how you can manage it better. What kind of things do you do to cope with that?
Okay, so for me, I feel that this being able to disclose is an important, excuse
Yeah.
me, is a very important aspect of living with a chronic illness, because I know a lot of women who are studying or at work are not disclosing that they are in some discomfort, and this does
Mm.
impact on their work. It significantly impacts on their work, and there are many who are having to struggle. They're really falling behind in their studies and so on. So being able to have that level of confidence to disclose is important. And of course, when you're disclosing, you expect a supportive response. And I'm lucky in that at every single time that I've disclosed that I'm in pain and so on, I've received that level of support. But
Great.
not everyone is that lucky. I know
What do
a
you think was
lot.
what do you think was different for you? How was it the way you did it, or the fact that you felt you had a right to that support? Like, how, if you were teaching some of your people that you work with, your ladies, what would you be saying to them into if they were frightened or fearful or of being helped in some way? What did you do? Do you feel
You
that
do have
worked?
you have a point there, because yes, I have always felt that I do deserve a support. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable. So
Mhm.
whenever I would put the request forward, it would be a strong request.
Mm.
There was no hesitation there. There
Yeah,
was complete confidence that I do expect you to give me this level of adjustment, and I'm
yeah,
going
yeah.
to push for it if you don't give it to
Mm.
me at the first go.
Good.
And I never had really to push for it, because I think I always come on so strongly, whether
Yeah.
it was in my studies, in my life, or even in the medical community. I always come on very strongly with all my arguments, and
Mm.
because I truly believe that you know there's something impacting me. I'm not making it up.
Yeah.
I am not being oversensitive. So I do deserve certain adjustments around me to help me cope with whatever it is.
It
And
sounds like as well that you had an idea of what the outcome was that you wanted. You had a clear, not maybe absolutely 100%, but you kind of knew what the solution could be. And you've thought that through before you go there and you think, right, this is the outcome that I want. This is what I'm aiming for.
I must
And
say that's true. That's true. I guess it's just the way I am. And I guess with my psychology
mm,
studies, you know how if you've
mm,
done psychology, you know it how it makes you think critically. What is it that you are
yeah,
expecting? What is the outcome that
yeah,
you want? And how do you get there? So
yeah,
whenever, let's say, the medical community or when approaching my doctor, usually I would go with an outcome in mind, that I want to be able to get this test or that test, or maybe this medication. I want you to consider this. So, in the very beginning, yes, I did go towards my doctors expecting they would give me the solution,
mm,
and they would tell me what I need, what needs to be done, and so on. But after a while, I understood that I need to research by myself what I
yeah,
need. I need to understand what's going to make my life easier, and I need to ask for it openly and not wait for others to tell me or to come up with it or to guess, basically.
yeah, absolutely. So
No,
it's that
I have to be given it.
self-efficacy. It's that saying, look, I'm gonna take a bit of control here. I can't control this pain right now, and it's a lot of other things I can't control in my life. But I'm gonna do what I can. I'm gonna research. I'm gonna have goals and outcomes. I'm gonna just reach out and see what happens. But I'm not gonna do nothing. I think that's the thing. You didn't fall into that helplessness and that hopelessness of I can't do anything here to influence this, which was really good. Awesome.
Yes, that level of control, because with chronic pain and any other symptoms that affects your body, like on a daily basis, you kind of lose control a little bit of over your body. You feel a
Yeah.
loss of control over your body and a loss
Yeah.
of control over your life. And you try
Yeah.
to reassert that control somewhere, I would say. And
Yeah.
for me, this is, I guess it comes in asking for all these adjustments. It's that's how it is. That's
Well,
my level of control.
I
I
think the
control
thing
what I
is,
can.
yeah, sorry. I'm just going to say, if you don't ask, you don't get. I have this little thing at the back of my head all the time, thinking, "Oh, should I? Should I? Could I? I got a right to this." And I think,
Mhm.
well, it's not up to me to decide that. It's up to me to ask, and then
Yes.
people will tell me if it's not possible, or I shouldn't be asking. But I've asked, and I'll
Yeah.
find out if I ask. If I don't ask, I'll never know, right?
You never know. I had a coach in the past who told me that, the worst thing that someone could tell you would be no. That's it. If you ask,
Mm.
and that's the worst that they could do. They would tell you no. That's it. Nothing else
That's
would
right.
happen.
So if you can deal with a no, if you can't, then obviously you need to build your ego strength and your confidence to be able to be okay with people saying no, and that's a step back. But if you're okay with a no, you've got nothing to lose, have you?
Yeah, that's true.
Except we don't take no for an answer, do we, when we've got chronic illness?
No, we don't
There's
usually take
always
no.
a way.
No, I don't take no. Usually, I must say I've had good doctors, let's say, who haven't been too difficult, and they've
Mm,
kind of really cooperated with me. I've been lucky in that sense too.
good.
Even though there's been difficulties along the way, I've been lucky in that sense. But I know others are not that lucky. For instance, I know women who've been to their doctors and so on and been dismissed and now don't want to go back to do more tests or try to pursue more
Right.
treatments and so on because they feel they've been so offended along the way,
Mm,
gaslighted, they don't want to
yeah,
go through this again. And it
right.
really does impact a person.
Yeah,
It has a
absolutely.
huge impact on your mental health because not only you're having to cope with the condition itself and the impact on your life, but you're having to cope with the environment where people around you now disbelieving you, dismissing you, and not being cooperative with.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
it causes a huge amount of mental distress. Definitely.
Absolutely. And the lack of support and help, because if you don't go back because you're fearful of going back, then you don't get the help you need,
Absolutely. And
which means then you, mm,
the more you delay treatment with
yeah,
certain conditions, the worse it gets and it gets harder to treat it.
absolutely, for sure. Yeah, catch things early and, things can be treated quite easily. But if you leave it because you're fearful of going and getting treatment, which is very common with
It's
people
very
with
common,
chronic
yes.
illness,
It is very common.
um, the treatment can be quite prolonged and severe because of it. So that's the downside of that.
That's
But
a very good
people have
point.
got people have got you to help them. Shabnam, I know you work with women predominantly or only. Is that correct? You only work
I
with
work with
women.
them, yeah.
Yeah. Is that a cultural thing or just a preferred choice?
I feel that it's a bit of my orientation. I find that women are the one who's, women's health have been really ignored, I would
Mm,
say. There's very much less research, less funding for women's health. And so we are kind of not really taken care of, I would say, in the medical community. So I
okay.
do believe that women need that level of support. So it's basically a choice that I've made to focus really, because
Okay.
I have this amount of energy and time, and I want to put it
Yes.
to good use for those who really need it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think women
Not
probably can
saying
relate
that men
well.
don't deserve it, sorry.
Yeah, no,
That's my
absolutely
point.
they do, and I wish more men would come forward because I've got a lot of guests on this show coming up, but I've only got one man, and does that tell you something that men don't particularly want to share stories? I don't know. I'm trying hard. I will find some.
It's
But
interesting. Sorry, Karen.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Something came to my mind that a lot of women that I talk to say that, for instance, endometriosis, if something like that was affecting men, they had a similar type of condition, let's say, which
Mm,
caused this type of chronic pain, by now we would have had more treatments and even a cure.
yeah,
But it's not like that. There's
yeah,
a real lack of focus on women's health.
Yeah,
And especially women's
mm,
reproductive health is even worse.
yeah,
It's
right.
even worse.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's been a great show, and you are going to come back to share some of your wisdom too, to help others. You know, you've learned so much. We learn so much, don't we, from living with our chronic illnesses and diseases. That you know, it'd be an injustice to not share our skills and the things that we've learned along the way to help others. So you're definitely going to come back for sure.
I feel that with chronic illness, it's not only the physical aspect of it. There's a huge amount of suffering there. And you do need that level of support. I've gone through this long journey, and for a good period of time, I did not have any support until I reached for, then I had my coaches, I had therapy, and so on. And it helped me get to where I am today, where I'm still in pain. Yes, I still have symptoms, but I'm no longer depressed. I'm still getting on with my life and moving forward with life.
That's
So
great.
I do feel that there's a real need for these type of supports. And yes, I look forward to coming back on the show. And it's been really good talking to you today.
It's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and I look forward to seeing you again. If people want to get hold of you to get some coaching from you, some very valuable coaching, your business is called Thorns and Roses Coaching, Empowerment for Women, right?
Yes. Thorns and
And that's
Roses
the net.
Coaching. That's my website. Yeah.
Thorns and Coaches. Is it .com?
Yes.
Oh, .com. Yeah. So you know where to find Shabnam if you need her. She's an awesome resource to tap into, and definitely got a lot of skills and knowledge behind her. So that's it from us today. Another show, another successful and very pleasurable show to do. It's my Friday evening, so I'm going to go off and have a drink of wine. And Shabnam, you're going to go off and you've got a son's birthday to celebrate, right?
We told him we'll take him out. So yeah, he's looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, bye from me and bye from Shabnam, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye bye.